Hi, this is Andrew Egger with the Bulwark. It can be hard sometimes when you are one of the MAGA figures who's been put in to the government supposedly to do incredibly based stuff all the time and make all of the MAGA people's wildest dreams come true. It can be tricky because you have a spotlight on your work and people might start looking around saying, hey, what's going on? Where's my based MAGA outcomes? Where are the people arrested that I've been looking to see arrested? What's going on in Donald Trump's White House? Dan Bongino, deputy director of the FBI, former right-wing podcast host and kind of extended MAGA Trump world infotainment universe figure, is having that problem these days. Here to talk about it, Will Sommer, our great reporter on the whole wild and woolly right-wing media space. Will, what's going on with FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino these days?
Yeah, sure. So Dan Bongino is taking this, this former talk radio host, is a podcast guy. He's taking this kind of strange approach where he's constantly tweeting, everyone's stop bugging me. I'm working on it. I'm working on it. You can't see what I'm working on. And so that got me interested. More recently, he's been posting basically that the heat is on him because a bunch of right-wing influencers, some people at InfoWars, some people with Instagram accounts, I believe a guy named Gunnar Eagleman, they all got swatted. And so now Dan is on the case and they're saying, hey, why haven't you caught this guy yet?
I did not know that had happened to my boy. Is it Gunner? I've like Gunther or something. I didn't
Well,
know that.
there's Gunnar Thordarson and Gunnar Eagleman. So
Okay.
there's two kind of like two similarly named MAGA influencers.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I had not heard that had happened to this. So this is such a strange thing, right? I mean, like swatting is a horrible, horrible phenomenon. It should happen to nobody. I assume people kind of know it's this kind of like weaponized crank calling, basically, where people call a police department and say, hey, there's a violent crime taking place at this guy's home. Go check it out in tactical gear right away. It's violent. It can be dangerous. People answer their door and there's a SWAT team outside. It's a horrible thing. Shouldn't happen to anybody. Can you explain a little bit of background on why this is kind of a thing in MAGA media right now, why people have this on the mind and what they're expecting Dan Bongino to do about it?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, as you said, I mean, so these are these incidents where, it's often weirdly, in this case, been preceded by a lot of unsolicited pizza deliveries and sort of in a creepy way. It's like a bunch of InfoWars people got hit and an employee of theirs was recently murdered, like in an actual murder unrelated to this. And so then they start getting pizzas in this dead guy's name. And then suddenly the cops come and it's very sinister stuff. And so, not unreasonably, they've been expecting some FBI action. Now, I think the reality is these things, even in the best case, probably take a couple months to track the person down. But they're getting mad and they're saying Dan Bongino's useless. And this is kind of blending in with the larger idea. I mean, in the case of some conspiracy theorists, I mean, they thought there were 50,000 indictments waiting of kind of deep state figures and no one's been charged. And so this is kind of feeding into this broader discontent that Dan Bongino is really kind of taking head on and, for better or for worse.
Yeah. I mean, on a certain level, you almost have to feel a little bit bad for Bongino here. Maybe. I mean, maybe you don't. I don't know. I'm just trying to tease all this through in my mind because it's like on the one hand, yes, like presumably they should be looking into these swattings. Presumably they are to some degree. He obviously is out here saying, "Give me some patience, give me some time. We're going to deal with all this stuff." But at the same time, because like you mentioned just a minute ago, there's this much broader, wilder kind of world of right-wing conspiracy, the QAnon adjacent stuff, the storm is coming type people who are expecting success for Bongino and Kash Patel and the rest of Trump's federal law enforcement to look not just like we're going to get to the bottom of these swattings, but we're going to start perp walking all of the enemies of the regime that we've been waiting to see arrested publicly through the public square, right? Like Liz Cheney in chains, Benny Thompson in chains. I don't know who all else counts as the people.
Tom Hanks,
Nancy
Oprah. I mean,
Pelosi
it's
and
a very expansive list, right?
right. And so if you're Bongino, you're already kind of like, you have a lot of these people who are pre-primed to think you must be doing a bad job just because that stuff hasn't happening. And then you add on to that the difficulty of supervising the actual criminal investigations of true actual criminality for this audience that's like increasingly who's expecting you really to deliver, but also is increasingly hostile, based on the stuff that's not happening, the wild stuff that they expected you to be able to deliver.
Yeah, exactly. And he's also has a lot of scrutiny. I mean, there's so much scrutiny of the FBI from the right after years of these whistleblowers, who are claiming, oh, the FBI is out to get Trump people. Then him and Bongino and Kash Patel are promoting people who have been implicated as kind of like Trump haters, I think often baselessly. And then suddenly there's this whole universe of FBI whistleblowers now with podcasts who can say, Bongino's betrayed us.
Yeah, so there's basically like two ways of looking at it, as far as I'm concerned. The one is that, I mean, how far off the reservation are we? Maybe we'll just talk about this first. Like, is this the kind of stuff that we want the deputy director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation to be spending his time? Like are these the people, these Infowars guys? Are these the people who we want him to wake up thinking, how do I please these guys today in my role, in this very prominent role in federal law enforcement?
No, I wouldn't say so. I mean, I think that's like, in the past we've had very buttoned down FBI directors, and then the deputy director of the FBI is supposed to be even more buttoned down. I mean, this is the guy who runs the show really behind the scenes, and instead you get Dan Bongino, who is tweeting like every other day at this point for a month about saying, "Hey, haters back off. I'm working on it. You can't see it." There was one point he said, "If you think I just came to DC for a vacation, like you're out of your mind." I mean, like real kind of trash talk. The other thing I get into in this newsletter is he tweeted, there's an article coming out about me in the New York Times. It says I got owned on the wrestling mat by one of the FBI's fitness instructors. The truth is, I was only hurt a little bit.
I'm sorry. That's so good. That's so good. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. Keep going. Is it like
No, I
a?
mean that's he said the Times is going to say that I was injured, but in fact it's a bit of a swelling. Now this Times reporter, he essentially calls him a pencil neck. He's like, this guy could never understand the need to get out and spar on the mat. I mean, this is like, I should say, this is like a 500-word tweet. This guy could never understand why sometimes I got to mix it up with the troops. And like, yeah, did I get hurt a little bit? Yeah. Well, this guy's the sparring instructor and I'm not. So it's not really fair.
Right. Well, and as you get into, when this New York Times profile comes out, I mean, it is like a footnote of like a completely different
It's
story, right? It's not like an expose on Dan Bongino that's getting rolled out here, right?
Well, I was so excited that he announced this story and everyone's waiting for it, because I was thinking, this is going to be the Bongino on the loose story about him just getting, thrown at the walls or whatever by FBI instructors. And then suddenly it comes out and there's got to be some backstory here that's like really hilarious. But the way it's written, it's like several FBI employees thought Bongino came off the worst for wear or something like that, which is just like I have to imagine the actual situation is perhaps a little more graphic if it made it into the Times at all.
Yeah. Well, it's a nice little vignette, and I'm glad that Dan Bongino was willing to bring it to our attention. It's just, and it's the same phenomenon, right? I mean, it's like he is in there to be like the MAGA fantasy of like what a real like based, hard charging, like take no prisoners, kind of renegade would be in this role, and finally deliver us the kind of outcomes we've been looking for. And it's just this fantasy. I mean, it's impossible to live up to for anybody. I mean, like I'll stick up for Dan Bongino here. I'm very confident he's working as hard to make the InfoWars people happy, much harder than anybody I would be remotely comfortable in that position. InfoWars people, eat your heart out. I'm sure he's doing a great job for you guys. You should lighten up on Dan Bongino a little bit. But this is also like, I mean, it's not just him, right? This is kind of a phenomenon that we've been seeing. I wouldn't say across the Trump administration, but there's been a number of examples. I mean, like you recently wrote about how Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has been getting a lot of blowback from like former hardcore RFK Kennedy Jr. people because he's, I mean, what was it, chemtrail stuff? Was it vaccine stuff? Can you talk
It
to me a
was
little bit
that
about what's going
yeah,
on
so
with
it's
that?
kind of a combination. They're after him for several reasons. One, he hasn't done anything about the chemtrails. These are, of course, the imaginary chemicals sprayed by airplanes. I think the gentleman in Half Baked, was complaining. He looked up in the sky and he said, RFK, they're spraying Tampa today. You got to rescue us. And then amid this Texas measles outbreak, RFK finally kind of grudgingly says, yeah, your kids should probably get the measles vaccine. And they're saying, no.
Yeah. Well, it would be a little less fun for us if they were all really happy. So I guess there's something to be said for the Schadenfreude of like they don't get necessarily their perfect outcomes either. Although if they just stopped and looked around, maybe they'd be a little grateful, because they are, again, you guys, the Trump administration is working really hard to please you specifically, and maybe lighten up on them a little bit. He's making us mad. He's owning us. Focus on that. Focus on how owned we are. Give Dan Bongino a little bit of a break or whatever. One last thing. I know you got to run. I guess
Yeah.
why do you think it is? This is just a thing I'm batting around in my mind. Why do you think it is that guys like Bongino and RFK, like these secondary figures, even though they have like humongous amounts of like MAGA street cred, they get like accountability from the cranks in a way that it seems like, Donald Trump never really does. Trump is always kind of like hovering above this. Nobody ever kind of comes around demanding that he, deliver on this or that insane kind of right-wing crank world expectation. Is that true? Maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe
Well,
those
no,
those
I think
voices
it
are
is
out
true. No, I think you're right on. I mean, I think it's because Trump's the big dog, right? I mean, he's kind of proven that he can win no matter what, and people have tried to mess with him and they've been destroyed. And so I think as a result, it's the blame will always fall on someone like Dan Bongino or some random or even Pete Hegseth or whoever. But they're never going to be able to really challenge Trump directly.
Yeah, yeah. Poor guys. All right. Well, thanks, Will. Thanks for coming on and talk about all this. You can read it all and even more that we didn't get around to talking to in his false flag newsletter out today on the bulwark.com. Hope you share the newsletter, share the video, subscribe to the YouTube feed, subscribe to our page, subscribe to the Bulwark. Thanks a lot, everybody, and we'll see y'all next time.
Hey, YouTube fam, if you want to support the Bulwark, the best way to do it is by becoming a YouTube Bulwark Plus member. The Bulwark is truly independent. We have no corporate overlords. We're not settling any dumb lawsuits with Trump. By joining, you help support our work, and you can get a bunch of perks right here on this platform. Ad-free content, bonus videos, live streams, and some emojis of me, which I guess some people want. So come join, come hang out, become a Bulwark YouTube Plus member, and I'll be seeing you in the comments. So behave.